So I'm Candy Castellanos, and with me is Ariel Sullivan, and we are the co-facilitators for this Future Search initiative on improving the circularity of compostables and compost. And this is our fourth discovery workshop, and we are focusing today on distributors, broadliners, and food service product suppliers. Get this visible. So super excited to have you here. Super excited to be here. And as you enter, if you can put yourself on mute, that would be great. And as we go, any questions at all that you have about this project for the panelists, make sure to put those in the chat. We do collect those and we work with the panelists afterwards to create a Q&A that we can share back out with the community. And so, so this is part of a whole system strategic planning effort. And our intention is to work with the whole system impacting compost and compostables across the United States to create a shared vision, a common purpose, and clear action plans based on the work that everyone is willing to do together. We have an amazing steering committee that is from all types of different stakeholders from across the system, and we are working with them on this project for both the discovery workshops and leading up to our big event, the Future Search event, which is in September in Denver. And so we have, our steering committee has worked hard to be very clear and purposeful about what this project is organizing around. And so this is a whole system strategic planning and systems change effort. And it's based on just engaging pioneers like all of you from across all parts of the system to create a collective roadmap toward optimizing the circular economy of the U.S. composting industry. And so we are working on intentions around designing an inclusive whole system circularity model for the health of the composting industry. We're working on improving collaboration and coordination between all stakeholders in the compostable system, improving information flow between brands, packaging design, points of material sorting, and commercial composting processes, identifying strategies to direct more food waste to commercial composting facilities that creates value and confidence for all stakeholders in the system, and shifting stakeholder behavior to mitigate contamination and the cost of contamination linked to non-compostable food contact packaging. This project has three different pieces. So one piece that you're here today with us is we are doing a pretty deep dive into discovery ahead of our strategic planning 3-day event in September. So we have 12 90-minute discovery workshops, each one from a different perspective within the system. And so these are happening every 2 to 3 weeks, all the way up until September. In September, we have a 3-day whole system future search strategic planning event. And then Ariel and I will be creating the systems of support for activation of that strategic plan following that event through this next year. This is a very uniquely funded project. It is a collaborative. And so everybody that you see here has been contributing to launching this project. And so all of these are circularity partners. We are continuing to encourage others to join in whatever way that you can to support this project.
Yes, thank you, Candy. And hi, my name is Ariel. If you've not seen my face yet, I'm co-facilitating with Candy and supporting this initiative. So we're here at number 4 of a 12-part series of discovery workshops. And this is really to generate a whole systems understanding of the current state, which will feed the conversations in the strategic planning meeting in September. These happen about twice a month on Thursdays at this time. And we've had a huge increase in signups in the last couple of weeks. And so we'd love to keep that going. So please, there's a link in the chat. Please share this with your colleagues, with your friends. We want to generate as much awareness around this really rich content that we are producing. And our next group is the Composting Infrastructure Group, which will be at the end of the month. And as Candy referenced, the data is being themed and shared out We have a YouTube channel that is accessible for everyone, and it has the first 3 recordings on it. So this recording will be added to that repository. And here, if you have not RSVP'd yet, there's a link in the chat. Here's a QR code for you as well. At the end of the call today, we will be sending a follow-up with the question and answers from folks that have asked questions in the chat, as well as the data that the highlights and the link to the YouTube. So those are and you'll see the Discovery Workshop 3 come out most likely early next week with some summaries. So stay tuned for that. And without further ado, we're going to shift into the conversation today. So we have 6 panelists here today. I'm not sure if Dennis has joined us yet, so he might join us a little bit later. We'll just wave him into the conversation, but he comes from Bunzel. We've got Glenn Abrahamson from BB17, Lauren Gropper from Repurpose, Michael Ryan from New Terra Compost, Shannon Liddick Mahler from Boise Co-op, and Solange Akril from Club Coffee Olam Food Ingredients. So thank you so much to all of our panelists for sharing your wisdom with us today. We're excited to hear your perspective. We have a good mix of different perspectives today. And the process is that we're going to go question by question, and we're going to hear from every panelist on question 1, and then we're going to move to 2, 3, and 4. We've got about 20 minutes for each question. So I'm going to start with our first. Let's go ahead and start with Glenn. The question is, to understand the scale of your operation, how many and what type of businesses are you distributing compostables to?
BB17 is primarily in the store brand space for retail. Currently, we have compostable products in around 24,000 retail locations in the United States and Canada. We do some we call back of the store supplies as well. So when a store needs, let's say, produce bags, for example, since we're already working with them under their store branding, we supply them things that they need for the store as well. But our main focus is to bring to light compostable products that are certified and meet all the local as well as federal regulations to assure that what is on the shelf that consumers buy is, quality, but at the same time compliant.
Great, thank you. Lauren, let's hear from you.
Hi, everybody. Great to be here. I'm Lauren Groper. I'm the founder and CEO of Repurpose. We are also a brand. We're a consumer brand. We're in about 25,000 retail doors across the country, from coast to coast and everything in between. We have a portfolio of about 20 SKUs, ranging everything from compostable trash bags, straws, plates, bowls, cups, lids, and we've just actually entered the bamboo toilet paper and paper towel space as well. So we've been doing it for 12 years, and very excited to learn more and participate in this amazing group. So thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Let's travel over to Michael.
Thank you. So my name is Michael Ryan. I'm one of the co-founders of New Terra Compost. We're a little different because we're a compost manufacturer. We are an organics hauler, and then we are a distributor for compostable products. So we kind of go all the way down the line of it. We do all food service products, bags. We bring in products from about 4 different manufacturers and directly. And then we primarily work with our members and events in the area that are composting. And I come from the restaurant industry, managing restaurants and inventory for over a decade, and then also working for a distributor for another decade, selling products. So I know a lot about that space as well as the composting side of it as well. So.
Great, thanks for being here today. And then Shannon. And you're on mute.
Oops. Am I good now?
Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. I use Teams all the time, not Zoom. So hi, my name is Shannon Mahler, and I've been in retail for 25 years backstage. For me, I am currently the category manager at the Boise Co-op, but my previous experience, I was with Safeway Albertsons for 13 years, and while there, I was a senior product brand manager for all the private label items. So I launched all of the Open Nature compostable line, including napkins, butcher papers, trash bags, storage bags, and whatnot. So definitely have a lot of experience in getting the packaging up and running with the correct certifications and all of those things. And also too, working at the co-op, we're considered a clean retailer. So do have a lot of feedback from customers, because locally we do a lot with regenerative farming and, obviously compostability and eco-friendly items at store level is something that our customers are very concerned about. So thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for being here, Shannon. And let's go over to Solange.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm Solange Ackrell with Club Coffee based in Toronto, Canada. We're now also part of a larger OFI online food ingredients, which has other categories more in commodities like cocoa, coffee, dairy, nuts, and spices. But our focus is on coffee, and we support food service, retail, and e-commerce, mainly private label, CPG brands, and our own brand that we have exclusively on e-commerce. And my background's mainly before Club Coffee is mainly retail in category strategy and private label with Walmart and Loblaw, Canada's largest retailer. But our focus, we were one of the first to launch compostable coffee pods for Keurig machines, and now we have them for Nespresso, going on almost 9 years. And I know it seems like such a wasteful category, but it is a significant one for consumers. So almost 50% of the sales in the category, and it's still strong. But we wanted to have the right solution. So happy to share our journey. Thanks.
That's wonderful. Well, and as we go into our next question, we're going to talk a little bit about why your business is in the business of distributing compostable packaging. So what do you believe are the greatest opportunities created by offering this service to your customers? And so we're going to start with Glenn.
Well, years ago, as a company, we were focused in the bath and beauty area as a supplier, again, under store branding as well as control brand for Target and Ulta and other companies. And I realized, as well as my team, that we were putting out a lot of plastic out there, tubes of lotion and different things. And then we started playing with different types of materials to put our lotions and bath beads, etc., using different types of recyclable material. And maybe we're a little ahead of our time about 20 years ago, but we did get a lot of play on it. And I knew that this is the direction we need to go, but we had to make a decision. Are we going to continue this path, or we're going to make a dramatic change? And we decided to make that change into compostable material and try to eliminate single-use plastic. So by doing so, we knew there was a niche for a company who had connections with all the major retailers to bring together a store branding program that can help them not only understand the potholes of regulations, not only by federal and state, but also local municipalities, to work with them so that they can create a program that's going to be best for the customer and also to the composter. And we strive to try to help educate retailers, but at the same time, we try to work with other people, sometimes our competitors, to try to work together to eliminate bad actors who are putting out products out on the shelf that consumers are buying. Note they do pay a premium for these products, but it's unfair that when they take them home, they're just going to end up in the landfill anyhow. And some of these products have PFAS and other chemicals. And what we need to try to do is work together to eliminate these bad actors so that if we try to clean up the contamination, we can also help people like Ryan and other composters see that not only us as supplier manufacturers care, but also the retailers care about cleaning up this mess. And unless we work together, nothing's going to change.
Hmm. That's great. Lauren.
Well said, Glenn. I, like Glenn, am in a very similar space in that we're dealing directly with consumers. And I think just a brief bit of background, I've been in sustainability for about 25 years. I was in the architecture space doing green building before starting Repurpose, and was working on building green sets for film and TV, where behind the scenes we would then eat off of plastic salad bowls and plastic forks and knives and drink plastic water bottles. And I learned then that recycling was a bit of a myth, and I'd be interested to hear more about the folks involved on the recycling side here, if there are any of you, but that really, like, there was no solution for all this waste, and that composting was really the answer. So that's how I got into it. I think it's just super important that consumers get clarity about how, what to do with their products like this, where they can dispose of them, how it all works. There's just so much confusion, and we all need to work together to make a change. So hopefully this process will help us get closer.
That's great. Thank you. Michael.
So we got into this. I mean, I remember 10 years ago, I put a PLA cup in my hand. And at that point, I didn't really know what compostable cups like that were, right? And once I saw that, I mean, I was already a product guy, and then it just changed the way I looked at all of it. I was really excited about the future of single-use plastics and things that couldn't be recycled, and products that had food all over them that you couldn't recycle either. So when we first got going, we understood real quickly that we were the educator. As a composter, we were doing all the work, educating the food service, the restaurants, the corporations that we were in, and then the other distributors who didn't care were coming around and they were selling the products to them. And then, one of the things, I tell this all the time, there was a hospital that we went into to start composting at, that all they had front of house was compostable. And, the food service manager doesn't understand it. The chef doesn't understand it. It's a third-party catering company that's in charge of food service there. And so they're just doing what the CEO of the building they're in wants them to do. And they're contracted to purchase from a certain distributor. So they can't go to any other distributors. And while I'm standing there, she says, everything here is compostable. And from across the room, I said, well, except for those 2 cups. And she says, what do you mean? And I said, those 2 cups, they're not compostable. They're like recycled content cups. And she goes, well, they're all supposed to be compostable. And this was her expecting their distributor to send them the right products. But what happens a lot of times is the distributor says, well, we don't stock enough of that, and we don't hit minimum, so we're just going to sub you whatever we have in stock, and it's going to be biodegradable, and you're going to be excited about it because it's $20 a case cheaper than the compostable version, right? And you're like, oh, you're saving me money. And then I'm pulling out forks for months out of compost because your distributor didn't know what they were doing, because there's sustainability people at all these companies, but at the end of the day, you're talking to the sales rep that's sitting in front of you selling the product, and their job is to move boxes. So they're moving boxes. I actually sat in one of our members, like in their office. They got online and they were showing me the compostable fork. This is the compostable fork, Michael. It says compostable, but nowhere else did it say it. And this is from a huge distributor. They just wrote compostable fork when in reality it was, it had some plastic in it. It wasn't a compostable fork. And now again, I'm pulling contamination out. So for us to get into this space, everything that you can get from us is safe. It all goes through our compost system and doesn't come out the other end. It's soil and it's safe. So it was really important. We noticed it really early when we started doing it. We've got to start selling these products, because it's the only way we're going to be able to ensure that our stream is contamination free, basically.
And just managing your inputs.
Right.
Yeah, that's incredible. Okay, Shannon.
Yeah, I definitely just want to say I concur with, I mean, one of the notes that I took down was definitely for me on the retail end of it. I know when Albertsons, Safeway, and I've always been very conscious of the environment ever since I had kids and just since I was younger. As soon as Albertsons, Safeway wanted to implement a compostable like initiative on packaging and all that, I was very excited to be able to work on the project. And I think one of the things that I really wanted to touch on for me, being at the Boise Co-op now, I really enjoy being able to help share my knowledge, because definitely one of the things that was very frustrating, you know, during the launch at Albertsons, Safeway, and even now, is the lack of knowledge and just the amount of pushback or, you know, lack of information, or people that feel that they understand exactly, you know, what compostable is or what biodegradable is, and, you know, just getting a lot of pushback or getting a lot of, you know, questions as to why cost is so high and not understanding how everything ebbs and flows. So for me, you know, I just want to do my best, you know, in my roles to be able to, you know, give as much knowledge as I can and be able to provide as much information. And definitely being at the co-op now, it's a great place to be, because again, a lot of our customers are very conscious about, I mean, we even use compostable items backstage as well, you know, behind the delis and everything else, you know, trying to be 100% you know, eco-friendly within the store. So for me, it's a personal goal to be able to just help inform, you know, more customers and just, you know, people backstage on how things truly are, because there's so much misinformation out there, and it's just it's really sad. So
No, I appreciate that. And apologies for the background noise. I'm not sure where that's coming from. Hopefully everybody's muted. So we've got ghosts and the clockworks. But Shannon, thank you so much.
you're welcome.
Solange.
It's great. It's great to follow, Shan. Hopefully you can hear me okay. The why we got into compostable pods for coffee. And I think I said, you know, coffee, the pods are 50% of the sales, but coffee is a massive category for retailers in packaged goods. It's in like the top 5 easily category center of store. It's the #1 consumed beverage on a daily basis. So it's important, it's relevant, it's not going anywhere for consumers. And even though they love the convenience and the choice and the on-demand aspect of pods, over 20 billion pods, these plastic, traditionally, these plastic multi-layer, there's like the traditional kind of K-cup that you might see out there on Keurig machines, has a foil lid, organic coffee, a paper filter, and a plastic cup, polypropylene. And it's a convenient category, but that's not very convenient to try and take apart all those types of components, empty out the organic precious coffee and rinse it. And they're not even recyclable in the end when they get to the MRFs. So the retail, one of our biggest retailers had asked us to come with a solution that made sense. And everybody tends to go to recyclable because it's what consumers know. That's a big aha for us, by the way, in all the consumer research we do in the USA and Canada. Consumers still don't really understand, to be honest, what compostable is. They like the term biodegradable. It seems friendlier to them, but they don't get it. So they tend to lean to that. But anyway, they tried to get us to do recyclable, and we said, it doesn't make sense to do that. It has to make sense throughout the supply chain to use for the consumer, easy to use, dispose, and also good at the end of life, and and can be certified and actually break down and be good soil and healthy, safe soil. So we went with compostable because all the materials can be compostable. The lid, we have a ring and mesh, so they don't need to separate it. And then they can brew it. Over 90% of the weight of the pod is coffee organic waste, which makes sense to move into compostable. And then they don't need to separate it, and they can dispose where accepted and tested and so on. We chose to go a different route because we do all types of packaging when it comes to, you know, your bagged coffee, and which is multi-layer plastic and foil. It's not recyclable at all. You can imagine how many bags are out there on shelves, and cans and plastic cans. We went the paper-based route because it's a different type of process. You can remove the coffee, that can be composted, great, and then the packaging managed separately. So we designed it for the right fit for purpose with the end state in mind. And with the consumer in mind, because that's half the battle, educating them and having them do the right thing in the end. So that's the why we went into compostable.
That's great. Thank you so much.
All right, we're going to move to the next question. And I'm going to put it in the chat right now. So the question number 3 is, what have been some of the greatest challenges your business has dealt with when it comes to distributing compostable packaging to your customers? Let's start with Glenn.
Well, that's a loaded question. It goes back to some of the comments earlier about education. Shannon, you know, as who spearheaded the Albertsons program in Compostable, it was educating the retailers on what is truly compostable, what is not. I'm dealing with several retailers right now who wanted us to bid on a certain program under store branding. And they come back and say, well, your price is higher than so-and-so. And oh yeah, they claim the bags don't have to be green. They can be clear for produce. And you have to deal with all these false claims from these bad actors. And then you spend hours, sometimes weeks, trying to educate the buyers that what they're hearing from the salesperson is untruthful. And it's all about making a fast buck. So that's probably one of the biggest hurdles we have, is trying to continue educating the buyers on compostability. And it is difficult because of the fact that these buyers usually don't stay in the same position very long. In most retailers, they will move around, they shift, they get promoted, and then, you know, you're starting all over again with somebody new, and you're going to have to, you know, bring them up to speed. And then you get the sourcing department asking again, to Shannon's point, is why is this more expensive than whatever? And then you have to go back and explain all the bullet points again. So that's probably the biggest hurdle that we have, is the education that ties into the bad actors that I brought up earlier. So those are the biggest hurdles. But we also have to work with, you know, local municipalities and states, because unfortunately, they do come up with regulations that unfortunately is based on a feeling, possibly, maybe some theories are just not workable. You know, one of my biggest issues I have right now is trying to help educate, you know, other states not to follow Washington, for example, with the colorization of printing on plates and bowls. I do agree we need to have some type of marking on there to show consumers and composters that it's compostable. But I disagree about adding color to plates and bowls, because frankly, you can't use 100% soy ink. So my fear is contamination to the compost field, because these chemical bases have, I'm sorry, synthetic chemicals in it. So it's education. That's where this whole committee has been brought together, to try to figure out ways how we can educate all these sectors. I'm sure my 3 minutes is up.
Thanks, Glenn. Lauren, let's go over to you.
Yeah, I think our biggest challenge, I really echo a lot of what Gwen says, but is really because we supply national retailers, and there is different requirements state by state. So how do you comply with the various requirements when you're supplying a national group? And oftentimes, I know Shannon, you can probably speak to this too, because you led a national program at Albertsons. You know, you have what's called the planogram, which is what is the shelf that is the same in every state across the country, but yet some products have to be one way and some products have to be another. And as the manufacturer, it's just very difficult to do that on all levels. So that's probably our biggest challenge.
Great. Thanks, Lauren. Michael.
Yeah, so, you know, biggest challenge, I'm with everybody else so far. The greenwashing of the products that are out there is difficult. The terminology that's listed, I mean, it all has to work for Susan down the street who just started composting, and she's got to understand what everything is and how not to get duped on it online, you know, purchasing off the internet. So, you know, making sure things are, I mean, striped like PLA items, or that we just know. As a composter, you got to be able to notice it like 10 feet away, right? And if you've got to go get off the tractor and go digging in it and start pulling stuff out, and then you find out it is compostable, you've already wasted a lot of time too. So I mean, it needs to be noticeable for us. But greenwashing takes a lot of different forms. Greenwashing can be in companies and what companies say they do as well. You know, if you're a company doing something in a mandated area, do you care about it, or are you just doing it because you're mandated to do it? And then all the other places that you're at, you don't care. I mean, I've heard a few times where if it's available in an area, we do it. And I've talked to composters in the last couple of weeks all over the United States, and they're not working with them. So, you know, there's a lot of different forms of greenwashing out there, not just the products that are out there. It's the companies that are involved in all of this too, that want it to look a certain way. But you got to compost it, right? The deal with all these products is making sure they get to the composter, that people know what they are. I've heard universal symbol a ton from everybody that I know in the industry. It's hard to pick certifiers. I mean, when I talk to the new composter down the street, so these are the 3 or 4 you need to look for. And then a lot of companies, I've seen them make up their own symbol and say compostable. So it's confusing, and you know, that's the hardest part. Another reason we try to keep everything in house for us, because if I have it, I've done the research on it, you don't have to worry about it. But that's not how everybody is out there. It's tough. So yeah, that's definitely the hardest part for us, is making sure it's done correctly and not greenwashed.
Thanks, Michael. Let's go to Shannon.
Yeah, so I won't be redundant. I agree with everything that everybody has said before me, and definitely learned to touch on, you know, when you do the national launch, it was very frustrating for me, and Glenn can definitely piggyback on this later. But unfortunately, what happens is, if you can't get the packaging to align between all states, there were a lot of states that just said, even though it was in the planogram and all sets should look the same, we're not going to take it. We don't need that around here. It's geographically, it does nothing for us, so on and so forth. So unfortunately, sometimes it can cause you know, lack of sales for suppliers, and that's something that's very frustrating, just because, you know, there's a lack of information out there, or you've got legal departments and there's challenges per state, and definitely that's something that's very frustrating. And again, it definitely goes back to you know, just lack of knowledge, and it's very frustrating, because how do we get, you know, everybody nationally to be on the same page when there is a lot of misinformation out there? So to me, that's one of the biggest challenges. I know for me locally, you know, being at the co-op, I'm trying to do my best, because I'm over fresh items. So, you know, if we buy an item that's local, and the person that's selling dressing, for instance, they're using like some type of, you know, recycled item, you know, things that can be compostable, I'm trying to, you know, educate the customers at store level, to where we're putting information on the shelf, little flyers, you know, and with validated, you know, concrete information explaining, you know, why something might be $3 higher than something that we've gotten just from a, you know, national distributor. So that's what I'm trying to do on my, but definitely from a national perspective, and doing large launches state to state, it's very difficult. So that's definitely the challenge that I've seen, is the lack of information and knowledge. So
Great, thank you, Shannon.
Mhm.
And then Solange.
I'll try not to repeat it, but I will reinforce on the education for greenwashing. I think we're also national. You can't develop products that are specific for each correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think any 2 composter sites are exactly the same. If it's length of time, moisture level, equipment that they have, the temperature. So certainly, you know, certainly having the third-party certification in a standard like ASTM helps. Field testing has been helping on that as well too, to try and you know, address that. But the education piece, I feel, is such a disconnect. And it's education at each step of the supply chain. I think that there's an accountability that's important, from the manufacturers, from the because the different claims, you know, has to carry through, and from what the product needs to be and meet regulatory, and do the right thing, making sure you're addressing the needs of all the different levels and stakeholders and composters versus what the consumer wants to hear. And I'm a marketer as well too, so please don't kill me, but I'm constantly battling our customers or our brand partners, because they want to do all these fancy claims, or they see somebody like Glenn saying the bad actors, and they're pushing while they're out there, and they've said that. I'm like, well, they can get sued. We're not going to. But it's the consumers are now eating it up. I just had somebody send me a film of a coffee wrap, and it had all these claims, and it said omni-degradable. I said, I don't even know what that is, so I'm constantly battling these things. So the disconnect, the need for consistent narrative education that's supported by regulatory and doing the right thing, I think is so important. And it comes back to even this anything we can standardize. Those are the key things that we've been trying to, that are key challenges as well.
We're going to go to our fourth question. Candy, you're on mute.
Great, thank you. All right. So our fourth question is, what should other stakeholders in the supply chain, the solid waste management system, and regulators take into consideration when problem solving around these issues? So what would be the most helpful from your perspective? And so Glenn, if you want to start.
What I've been trying to do is push retailers to start requesting certain documentation from suppliers who present compostable. They need, one, to double check their certifications. I have seen so many times, and I'm sure Lauren can tell you a bunch of them too. They'll have a fake BPI or a fake CMA logo, and they end up in a major retailer. They're on Amazon, and then you reach out to the company, they remove it, and then here comes another one. We need to try to get the retailers to ask simple questions. One, I want to see your certification reports. Send them over to us. We want to see your BPI, CMA, TUV, whatever. We want to see those reports. And to also double check them, because with PDF, you can fake all kinds of things. And also ask for that PFAS report. As a company, we have all our products checked yearly for PFAS. It's a blind test. Our attorneys handle it, goes to a CMA, BPI approved lab, and the report comes back and it's on file at any time. So if anybody wants to know, retailer, whatever, and some of our retailers do ask for this report yearly, they want to know. But you have to ask for these reports from that salesman who's coming into your office before you make any decision. And I think that's going to help a lot in trying to cut back this contamination into landfill.
Well, and it sounds like just asking individuals to gather more data and just provide verification of, the truthfulness of the products and the information about that. That's great. Lauren.
Yeah, just to add on that, I think exactly what we're doing here, having actual composters talk to legislators to come up with what works for them and create maybe a federal standard, that would be huge. There are so many, just keeping track of the regulations is honestly an entire job at a company. Just to keep track of what's happening where so that you comply when some of the rules don't even make sense to the composters. And so we're spinning our wheels just trying to meet the regulations. At the same time, it might not make any sense for the people that are composting it. So more of this, connecting the dots, making sure the people that are actually composting talk to the lawmakers and bring us into the mix too. What would work for us and what doesn't work. For example, embossing all your molds with something that is a great idea, but in practice, that's very difficult and very expensive. Very expensive. How do we take that on? I know that might be a better way to do it, but when you have, 20 SKUs across, 5 sizes per SKU, that significantly adds up. And how do you address it? So we got to come up with solutions that work for everybody.
Okay, that's great. Michael.
So I think the one thing that I would say here is, support your local haulers and composters. We're talking about the products need the composters out there. There's a lot of places that are mandated. I'm in the Southeast. There are no mandates. It's $30 a ton to landfill stuff out here, right? Like I'm fighting an uphill battle at times when it comes to this, because people aren't going to do something that doesn't make sense just because it's good for the environment, right? But if you want to see this grow, you want to see more composters take compostable products, start putting more money into what they're doing. help them out. Like, have your location start composting in areas and grow the composting industry. You know, we can't just worry about mandates and where the mandates are, and municipalities who are taking over small composting operations, and they're not educating. They're just a trash company now that's throwing a bunch of stuff into a compost pile, and there's a lot of contamination in there. You know, you got to remember that, like, there's a lot of folks fighting on the front lines right now, working really hard to make sure stuff is correct. And it's hard. Equipment is expensive. You know, people out there working is expensive. And we need people supporting all of us to get this, because compostable product in landfills, compostable product in landfill. We need to get it to a composter. You know, and we just had the state of Georgia just opened their first chapter for the Composting Council, and we were down there and we got to meet a lot of folks. But there's not a lot in the state of Georgia. You know, there's not a lot in the state of Tennessee. We just need more folks doing it. And when you talk about education, one thing that someone told me the other day that was great is like a national campaign. We all remember the recycling one with the Indian standing with all the plastics and everything everywhere. Of course, we know how that commercial was made, but we need a national campaign somewhere about food waste and why food waste shouldn't be going into landfills. So, you know, I think that just having the conversation with the composters, keeping composters in the mix the entire way too, and not forgetting that they're the ones having to deal with it when it comes into the site. Don't just worry about front of house, right? Compostable products where everybody can see it. If you're not doing it in the back of the house, then I don't want to hear what you have to say about how they need to look in the front of the house. So that's, I could go all day on that, but I think that that's probably my time. And I think I've got the point across on that one. So.
Well, and Michael, you had said very powerfully, you know, because you're both a distributor and a compost manufacturer, you know, you said composters need help. Can you say a little bit more about that? Like, what would help look like from other stakeholders in the system?
I mean, just the companies that are out there saying that they're doing all this stuff that won't talk to me. Their locations are in Chattanooga too. You know what I mean? But we're not where the front line is for them, which is California and mandated areas. You know, and like I said, landfill prices here, it's just cheaper to throw it in the garbage. You know, I've got some folks that we're working with right now that, I mean, it's like we're going in the right direction, but it's like, well, we can't open up any more stops because it doesn't make sense financially for us, you know, because landfilling it is just so cheap. And it's frustrating because those kind of accounts buy trucks, and you know, those trucks go into more areas and bring back more food waste. I tell people all the time, if you want me to go into another area, I got to have places composting out there. I can only grow if businesses are pulling me into their areas. So that's what composters and haulers need. They need, you know, the big corporations and companies in the world to stop saying they're doing it and do it.
That's right. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Shannon.
I think for me, I don't really have anything more to say because I feel like everybody before me kind of covered all of my thoughts and feelings on everything. I think just definitely driving it home on, you know, putting more information and education out there. But again, that's a difficult thing, even with a national campaign, to get everybody all on the same page and, you know, try to get rid of misinformation. But definitely doing meetings like this and initiatives like this is I feel like will help in the long run. So.
That's great. Thank you. All right, Solange.
I think most helpful, there's two elements. The one, why composting, like the importance of composting, I think has a really long way to go to educate, especially retailers and consumers, the benefits, and then when it makes sense. So on the why, you know, I don't really think like, you know, you have to really, this is part of the education. It's to help divert food waste from going to landfill. But why? That contributes to methane gas reduction, to greenhouse gas reduction. It helps in the environment. There's such a great benefit, but if you do it properly, it also is a revenue stream. It's how composters make their living. You need to make sure that they have good compost. It's all adding back into the whole, you know, the economy, the circular economy we talk about. So I think understanding the why, and to we've raised so many times, it's not because it's mandatory that you have to, it's doing the right thing and really educating on those benefits. And what I love to talk about is that at least we have a standard. Plastics don't. The Mobius loop means nothing, you know, but at least composting, you have a standard that you can refer to. And when it makes sense, don't just everybody love, you know, composting, it sounds great, biodegradable, which we know they shouldn't be using, or plant-based. But, you know, I get questions from people wanting to talk to me about my journey because, you know, if they want to do compostable phone cases, for instance. And I just said to them, I said, no. I said, you can't, it has to be related to help with food waste diversion, you know, but basic fundamentals, just because it just sounds neat, you know, and friendly, consumer friendly, earth friendly, all of those things are tied back to the education as well too. So it's such an important industry that's not as well known, and I think we have a long way. We need to walk in the shoes of the different stakeholders, especially the composters. It's one of the biggest learnings I've had, and I got to thank Susan from CMA. You know, they really help pull our, you know, to say you've got to get there. I learned about, you know, you have your fruit stickers as a consumer. I'm buying my organic fruit, I'm putting it in my green bin. I didn't realize, like, those stickers are such a bother, like you can't compost them. You know, when you go to I've had somebody point, can you tell me the difference between this fork and this fork? And they looked exactly the same, but one, how do I know it's compostable, or the come along? So it's such a long journey, and I'm humbled that we're still learning and evolving, but those are my biggest ones, the why and when it should be applied.
That's right. Well, and there's, I think, want to have the panelists kind of speak to this question of, you know, you have so much knowledge and you kind of live in a world that may be relatively unknown to a lot of other folks in the system. And so wanted to just ask, like, is there anything that we haven't asked in this space that you would just like to share to help the rest of the system, the rest of industry kind of understand your world? And so, Glenn.
I'm going to tie that into a question in the chat that Heather's been chiming in on in regards to the Washington State and how to deal with the lookalike products. And it all comes down to follow the money. Why are there so many companies out there selling fake compostable products? Let's look at California as a fast example. Many years ago, a legal group out of Northern California started suing everybody for PFAS. PFAS wasn't even against the law, but they were suing about it. They're making claims that their client may be sick, may have cancer, all kinds of different claims. A lot of companies got caught on this. We eliminated PFAS way before BPI even started requesting it. But there is companies and big companies who got hit with this. And this was a good payday. But the lawyer made a lot of money. And then California comes around and decides they're going to start banning PFAS. And this comes back again to Washington and as the rest of the country. Follow the money. So if the states and local municipalities start putting some hefty fines on fake compostable items, companies who don't put on the shelf product that has PFAS, they'll stop. If there's no money in selling fake compostable items, these bad actors will go away. And this is not just the retailers, this is the food service distributors. They need to ask for the paperwork. But the cities and states have to come together and start putting some hefty fines to encourage them to ask for this paperwork. Because if you don't, this will continue. So I hope that we all can get together and start working towards trying to get them to do that. But at the same time, you know, back to Heather's question about Washington State, yes, we are labeling everything that's to be compliant in Washington State, but we were one of the very first, probably the first company 4 years ago embossing compostable on every plate and bowl, and we have the CMA and BPI logo on each bowl and plate. We've been doing this for a very long time. However, we need to start looking at the plastic industry and start demanding that they have get involved in this. Maybe we should require them to change the color of all plastic. I'm just, let's say, red. Everything that's plastic has to be red. Or like a pack of cigarettes when you go to Hong Kong, which I don't smoke, by the way. It has some person who has cancer or whatever on there to scare you from buying, you know, cigarettes. Well, maybe there should be a logo on all plastic of some dirty landfill with some, you know, birds picking up plastic. I don't know, but we need to change the plastic community. So when Michael gets that big bin of compost, he can say from, I don't know, 200 feet away, plastic, plastic, plastic. Instead of saying, is that compostable? Is that compostable? Maybe we should reverse the narrative.
Thank you so much for that.
Everybody for your time.
Yeah. All right, Lauren, what haven't we asked that you think everybody should know?
I think there is just, and I feel like maybe a broken record, but I would really like to put an ask out there to connect further with composters and to get in touch with either lobbyists or legislators so we can all hold hands here and just come up with something that works for everybody. And then to Michael's point, to, you know, how can we create a campaign that gets the word out about what this is? Who can we connect with at the federal level to get a grant to do this? I've got very talented marketers that I can pull in for sure on the creative side, but you know, what can we do to really make this happen and move from talk to action and actually do this?
That's great. Michael.
Well, I think all of that's great. I'd love to see plastic as a tinted color there, Glenn. That would make it so much easier for me when it's sitting out there. You know, I think that a lot of companies out there too, they just mark up compostable products so much that it's really hard for some folks to purchase it too. I mean, we try to be as easy as possible, but it's hard now to go up against those biodegradable ones, right? Like, I think a lot of salespeople out there will see the money they can make on a compostable product if they put it up 50-60% and sling it out the door. You know, we got to be able to bring the price point down on it so it's an easy one for people to do. Right now, obviously, that's a difficult ask for some mom and pop shop down the street that wants to do right by composting, and now they got to take all their products and make them compostable. It's hard. But I think another thing that I would say too is, you know, when it comes time to go to Denver and have everybody sitting around there, I would just say as many composters as you can have at those tables, the better. And I think I've said it before. I mean, we all do a lot to try to show up to the convention every year, the composting convention. And if you don't go to that, it's a great thing for you to go to, because you get to see, this is where all the composters try to go to talk to each other and see what's happening in different areas and workshop ideas, because this is a new industry in a way. Everyone does it different. There is no cookie cutter way to run a compost facility for everybody out there. They're all doing it differently. So I would say go to those conventions too and talk to composters. But it's a big ask to go to Denver for a roundtable discussion. And every one of them that I've talked to in the past couple of weeks have agreed. There, man, that sounds great, Michael, but there's no way we can make it to that. So, you know, I can't say enough to just keep them all in the loop and support them, because they're growing, but they need to grow faster if we're going to make this something that we want to do something with.
That's great. And just to clarify, the event in September is a very unique event. And so it is a 3-day intensive strategic planning process where we are working with a cross-section and a microcosm of the entire system and building a shared action plan, common ground, and a strategic plan in support of how to create the most sustainable and workable system for all stakeholders. And so it's not your average workshop. And so just wanted to share that. And if you want to learn more about what Future Search is and how it works, I could pop something in the chat. And so to continue, Shannon, so what haven't we asked that you would like folks to?
Well, I think for me, in all honesty, I don't have any additional questions that are coming to mind at this point. I feel like there's been so much covered that for me, I have no additional questions. And I know that's probably not good as a panelist to say that, but I just feel like we've covered so much that there's no other additional questions at this time that I would have. So.
Yeah, that's great. And Solange, anything that you haven't shared that you think is important for everyone to know?
Yeah, sure. I think we touched a little bit, but on the consumer side, every time we do a survey or we go and talk to consumers about compostable, the number one question we always get is this going to cost me more? They want to do the right thing, but honest, they don't want to pay for it. And at least in our industry. And I think that comes back to that has to carry back all the way to the supply chain. And especially when you're trying to do the right thing and not do the wrong thing and the bad performers, like Glenn says, it costs money. It costs money to get a different color resin. That's why we need the standardization to do the embossing and all of that. In the end, the consumer doesn't want to pay for it. So there's that disconnect again, which is why, all the things we talked about are so important on the standardization. But they, at least in our industry, they just don't want to pay for it. So we always have to find innovative ways to meet the requirements, but also to meet the demand from the consumer.
That's great. All right, Ariel.
So there were some questions in the chat that were asked, and we have this time to answer them. And I'm just going to go kind of comb through these. So one of them is from Tori. How is compostable PLA material a viable solution if PLA never breaks down in a landfill? I don't know if you want to elaborate on that, Tori, and then I'll just open it up to whoever feels called to answer it from our panelist panel. Please jump in.
Hi, I'm Tori from Preserve, but I was just throwing it out there because, a lot of us sell PLA compostable products to the food service industry. And I think I'm really speaking more from Michael's camp, just to say we really need an end of life solution for PLA, because it's so great that we're all selling PLA compostable products, but a lot of it's ending up in a landfill. Consumers are buying the coffee pods and our customers are buying the cutlery, but they don't have a commercial composter. So just what Michael was saying, like building that infrastructure around the US and Canada. Sorry, one last thing. I think it would be awesome to see, the next phase of this industry be all backyard compostable, which we're working on as well.
Can I add to that? Tori, you should hopefully hear some good news later on next year. We are working with a large retailer as well as a few other companies on a enzyme that when added to PLA at the raw material form, that after we make cups, cutlery, etc., we'll make it home compostable. And also, besides home compostable, it's going to speed up the process of composting at in any composter facility to possibly, we're still doing the research on it, it could possibly break down in 20 to 30 days.
If it's possible, can I comment on the question? This is Munir.
Do you have an additional question, Munir, or you have a clarifying question?
Yeah, it's just for the concept for the lady that was asking for the biodegradation in landfill. And unfortunately, we see that a lot. And actually, everything that we are developing from a composting standpoint, whether it's home, whether it's industrial, to avoid biodegradable material to end up in a landfill. Because when they biodegrade in a landfill, automatically it's methane and CO2. So all those claims of good biodegradation in landfill are actually greenwashing. So this is something that the FTC is trying to regulate. And so I just want to share some thoughts with you that the idea, the concept of landfill biodegradation is just bad. It's like healthy cigarettes or something of that sort. So just some clarification. Hopefully it's helpful.
That's right. Thanks, Vanir.
Any other comments on the PLA from our panelists?
I have a quick, it's kind of like around the same thing, but especially with the biodegradation and landfills and things. So, I mean, because of the fact that I've always been the sustainable guy and always, even in my other job, wanted to do the compostable products, every vendor that came in to do a meeting, vendor rep, which is a vendor out there that has multiple different manufacturers that they rep the products for, every time they found out, oh, you compost, you like, sustainability, they're always so excited to tell you the thing they have, because every distributor and every manufacturer has a line now of something. Even the styrofoam manufacturers have this line of eco-friendly styrofoam. And they go, oh, you're gonna love this. You're gonna love this. And I got one the other day, which was this enzyme will go on it, and in a landfill in anaerobic condition, it will break down plastics and it'll disappear. And I'm just like, wow, what are they going to throw at me next? And I actually gave that to a friend of mine who's over a landfill. So it's like, just look at this for me and get this back to me. But you really got to watch it, because every one of them are coming out with something that it'll do this in a landfill, or it'll do this here, or it'll do this in you throw it out the window and it'll just disappear and whatever. So, you've really got to watch all the different things that all the different manufacturers and all the different vendors are coming out with to sell you, because they don't have a compostable line. So it's just, navigating it is difficult, especially if you work for a company who now, oh, we're selling this product, you need to move it, right? They tell the sales rep, you need to move this because we've gone in on it, so you got to start selling it. And now it's out. Now I'm picking it out of compost. So just, with that whole PLA and landfills, there's a lot of other stuff that they're throwing at you at this point.
Thanks, Michael. I actually just wanted to stay on you for a second, because Carolyn asked a question about Nuterra in the chat. And I don't know if you might know the answer, but the question is, do you have an approximate idea of how many composters in the US have the same business model as you? So being a composter, hauler, and a distributor. And do you think your model can easily be scaled or replicated by other composters? What might help encourage composters to adopt a similar business model?
I've got a lot of friends that I'm trying to get to do it that are in the industry. I work with some really great manufacturers that are helping and that believe that composters, I mean, they're making compostable products, right? So why would they not want the composters to actually be able to go out there and say, this is the product that I recommend? But it's for composters, it's just hard. I know a lot of them that are just haulers, and most haulers that you talk to want their own compost facility. They want to own and run their own compost facility, but permits are hard, and the property's hard to find, and so they don't get into that. And then you've got some composters that don't care to haul at all. They just want as much green, the yard waste and everything else. I think on one of the other earlier ones, there was a gentleman, I think it was from We Care, and he was just talking about how it's hard to find a composter that just does like leaf material and yard waste, but then you want to find another one that also has food waste. That's even harder. Now you want to find one that accepts compostable products. Oh wow, that's just tough. But most those haulers out there want the facility that they can do all this in, because they understand it. I believe it's very easy to continue doing for anybody. I just came from that industry. Products make sense to me, that kind of stuff makes sense to me. And it was just easy for me to just keep doing it, because I never stop. Every time I walk into a building, I'm looking at everything they have. So, I think anybody can do it if you get the right folks to do it. Inventorying products is a breeze once you get through it, but I recommend it to every composter and hauler out there. Find somebody to work with, hit me up, I'll help you, but we got to have more composters and haulers. So.
Great. Any other
Thanks, Michael.
panelists want to add to that at all? Okay, I'm going to move to another question. This is from Ashley. It has to do with paper. So she says, as a disposable tableware paper manufacturer, the state laws seem geared towards plastic. We struggle with some of the state laws because it's unclear on what these states are using for definitions. For example, we produce paper straws that are made up of paper and a small amount of adhesive. When speaking with someone from a state with compostable labeling laws, they would consider this to be untreated wood. What are your thoughts on this? And speaking to some composters, they say that paper is not a red flag for them and something they wouldn't really question as being compostable. We are also finding many of our customers are interpreting the law differently between the different states, which makes it tough. Do you have any ideas on how to combat this? So is there any of the panelists feel called?
So I think I've heard this said before, the industry like compostable, right? Like a paper towel doesn't really, if it's just a paper towel, you don't really have to have a certification on it because it's just a piece of paper, right? So you really got to be careful though, like where does that stop? Well, you know, you've got a paper straw and there's glue on it now, you've added something to it. Now I'm wondering, you know, wait a minute, what is the glue that's holding the paper straw together with? If it was just a paper straw as a composter, I'm going to accept it, right? If it's just a paper plate, I'm going to accept it. But then of course you put a wax or something on top of it. Now I'm questioning it. Now I want to see more certifications. I'm familiar with Hoffmaster and everything that Hoffmaster has too. But yeah, I mean, paper towels, we accept paper towels all the time. Obviously it's, we say like, no, don't use chemicals or anything with them. But if you're just cleaning up something or wiping your mouth or anything with it, throw it in there. But you know, like I said, every composter is different. The joke I say is like if an apple tree fell on a composter's house growing up and they didn't want to accept apples, that's what they want to do, right? At the end of the day, they can not accept whatever they don't want to accept. But for me, if it's just a piece of paper, I don't have a problem composting it.
Great. Thanks, Michael. Okay, so there's two other questions I've dug out of here. One is from Vivian. Looking for education on what is compostable or not has been mentioned several times. Not sure if this will be addressed later on, but how can everyone / other layers of the supply chain help with education? We've touched on education a little bit, saying that it's needed, but I'm wondering if there's like any specifics on how to educate.
Schools, you know, give more funding to schools where kids are seeing this stuff on a regular basis. None of our public schools will compost with us because it's not in their budget, right? So if you're going to start putting money into somebody out there that really needs composting and needs to understand it, I mean, this is International Compost Awareness Week, right? And none of my schools will do it because it's standardized test week. So you know, we've done it for free for any school in the area all week long that's ever wanted to do it. But right now they're testing. But you know, I spoke at something one time. We started the meeting with a Pledge of Allegiance, and I said, "Well, how'd you learn that?" We did it every day. Yeah, it wasn't Pledge of Allegiance week when you did it. You just did it every day at school. Well, then you should be composting every day at school, and then your kids are going to understand it. You know, it's you go into other countries and they look at you like you're crazy if you throw food in the landfill, right, or in the trash, and they come over there and they pick it out like, what are you doing? So you know, it's, if we made it more normal in schools, it would just be educated as kids are getting older, and it would be normal. Now, you know, we're kind of going backwards. We need to start it there, and there needs to be more funding too for schools, education systems to be doing it. And I don't know why they would say no to it.
Well, let me chime into what Michael was stating, and Susan from CMA brought this to my attention several years ago in regards to Cedar Grove. If I'm not mistaken, at one time they used to go to schools, and they still may go to schools. To okay.
One moment.
So they used to go to schools and they would show them about composting and, you know, teach the youngsters all about it. I think that maybe instead of asking the schools to spearhead the program, maybe we could reach out as a supplier to retailer. We have another one on the panel, Lauren from Repurpose. Maybe, we work together with composters across the country, maybe also tied into some of the retailers, and work with the composter who lives in those communities, who knows the schools and the school districts, and offer up a little seminar to the children on composting, especially composting in their region and area. And then we could also help, excuse me, maybe supply some samples to take home to mom and dad. It could be, some plates, bowls, a waste bag, compostable waste bag, or whatever, because everybody likes something for free. And let the kids go home, tell mom and dad, hey, I learned about composting from Cedar Grove, or I learned it from Recology, and hey, I got some bags here from Repurpose, or this one's from Open Nature from Albertsons, and hey, can we buy this when we go shopping? Maybe it comes from us. Maybe we need to start reaching out to the composters and working with them on this.
I was, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I really think that we need to figure out how we can bring legislators into this in a bigger way, because if it is mandated, and we can get some funding, whether it's state or federal funding behind it, or even local funding, I think you can educate alongside the legislation. But until it's legislated, you can educate all day, but I still think people aren't going to do it unless it's mandated, unfortunately.
Well, and there were a number of comments made about different types of education. And so what you're talking about now is kind of the consumer education, but Solange, you had mentioned that there's education needed kind of all over the place. And Lauren, you're talking about educating legislators as well. And so maybe speaking to, if each of you can speak to kind of where you see the most education is needed among the different sectors and stakeholders from where you sit.
Well, I think there's a lot of, and we've touched on this prior, but there's just so much misinformation. One, so how do you clarify that information, and how do you? And I think the press is doing a good job right now of sharing kind of the recycling myths, that recycling doesn't really exist. I think people see recycling as just kind of like, okay, that's the solution to this problem. If I recycle, I'm doing good by the world, and they don't realize that their products aren't getting recycled at all. So I think once people understand better that the solution is really composting, especially related to food waste, they'll demand more. But right now, I mean, yeah, they need some clarification on kind of what actually happens here. I mean, everybody does. Everybody does. There's so much confusion, even amongst people that are in the industry.
Yeah. I'm thinking about it. Like, I agree with Lauren. I was going to say, I'm thinking, I do think there's accountability and messaging at each level. If it's the lawmaking, the legislative, compost level, manufacturers, packagers, brands, but brands are probably, when it comes to at least consumer goods, to me, are the most powerful in that they love that they're a storyteller, but how do you, I don't think having them fragmented is as strong as a collaborative effort. Say you had a national campaign and you're able to get key stakeholders to come together from all of those points with a brand, and brands have money. I'm not talking about ours, but some of the bigger brands have a lot of money that they're willing to spend if it's the right campaign. With those right stakeholders, and certainly the industry, if it's US Composting Council, if it's CMA, BPI, can you come together and have that same message and educate and really pick the key things? Why is it important? What you need to look for, and make it very simple, because if it gets too complex, you lose them. So there's the art of simplicity, although while you have to still make sure that you're very, succinct in what's right. But even something like PFAS that we all assume that we know, we're so into it. the regular consumer doesn't know. They just see it as, they don't understand why these things are being banned. They think, cancer causing chemicals, but why? Why in the composting industry was it taken, and it's being legislated, it's back to the healthy soil, back to the environment. So I think to me, I think it would be really powerful, and nothing's perfect, but why not, just take a go and try to do something collaborative. And what are those core stakeholders? I think that needs to be aligned. Like, what are the must-haves? And there is some key brands, and I don't know some of the major ones that maybe cover some key types of products. I am sure that they would be open to doing something. I just don't know, how do you start that?
I just want to chime in. I agree with Solange, what she's had to state. We all have to work together, different suppliers from retailer to food service to try to get a clear message out. And unfortunately, it all comes back down falling to money again. The plastic companies have all the money. They spend a lot of money lobbying state and federal legislatures. That's why, as a company, we're on many committees, working with CMA and BPI, and you hear about these legislations moving forward. Sounds positive. We're getting there. And all of a sudden it's dead. And it comes down to who is, taking care of, certain aspects of politicians and who has the lobbying power. And we have to get a clear message out so that they can see that this is a growing movement to eliminate single-use plastic. And until we start working together on a clear message and start promoting and getting advertisement out through social media, tying in schools, but we have to work together. If we continue just working our own, trying to niche away at regulations and education of buyers, we're going to have the same conversation in 10 more years.
Great. All right. So we've got about 10 minutes left, and we've answered the majority of the questions in the chat. Just wanted to give one final opportunity if anybody in the room has pinged for them from the conversation that we've been having, or if you have any specific questions for the panelists, please raise your hand and we'll answer those before we close. All right, I'm going to take that as people feel complete. Our next Discovery Workshop is on May 30th. It's focusing on composting infrastructure. Was one that emerged for us in our groupings as something that's needed, like an opportunity area to dive deeper in. So that is going to be the focus of the next conversation. And we will make this recording available on YouTube and send out some insights as a follow-up. And just wanted to thank everybody for being here today, for engaging, your presence, your participation. Super grateful, and I hope to see you at the next one. And steering committee members, we'll see you in an hour and 38 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.